Hello everyone and welcome to Game 3 in the series here on Antigua Shipyard. Game 3 in this clan war. We have the blue Protoss player on the top left hand side of the map. Meanwhile, the red Terran from I believe the previous matchup. If you guys can't tell, there is a difference in the audio quality in the game now as I am casting from home with all of my sound equipment, all of my sound cards and everything I upgraded to give you guys the best quality that, well, at least I can afford at this time. Now, so far in this series, in this clan war, it is now tied at 1 game apiece. We'll see who's going to be able to come the victor in this particular matchup. I believe it was the red Terran player who won the last game, but then again, I did cast that game of a day ago, and I'm not too happy with the audio quality. I'll have to play around with those settings a little bit more when I'm on the road, but I am glad to say I am back at home and wishing you guys a happy new year. The first cast of 2012 that I am casting. May not be the first cast that you're listening to, but once again, I thank you for listening to me. Now, over here, we do see the supply depot being built in the fog of war. A very, very smart choice, making sure that you at least know what's going on over here in this portion of the map. It also prevents any sort of crazy proxy play on Antigua Shipyard, as sometimes players, if it is a forced cross-spawn, do try to build gateways along this north side. And SCV will be moving out, and it looks like this version of Antigua Shipyard is going to be a forced cross-spawn position as both players move out with their early workers, and they will be able to see each other for just a second as the workers just continue along their merry way. Now, the probe and the SCV are going to be coming into position. The SCV is going to pretty much spot an assimilator and a gateway coming in, so it's not going to be any very, very fast expansion. Cybernex core should be placed down, and then getting that standard Zealot and Stalker. Based upon what we've seen so far, these Korean players really like to go for some early pressure. I wouldn't be surprised to see an early Zealot followed up by an early Stalker to try to push out across the map. That one probe just being very, very annoying, patrolling around this location here, getting in some damage as the Marine finally pops out. The Marine may get some easy shots onto that probe, the probe deciding to finally back off there. The SCV did build a supply depot down over here behind the mineral line instead of on the front door, as the harvester count now sitting at 19 probes versus 15 SCVs. So that means that there was a lot of probes being chrono boosted off of this nexus. We should be getting that warp gate tech and now getting a stalker out as well, as we are now going into a factory. A very interesting strategy, as an early factory here can only mean one thing: a starport followed by banshees, or I guess it could mean two things: Hellion follow up as a probe. Now where is it going? The probe is now looking for that proxy factory. He is expecting cheese and is going to find it. So very nicely scouted out by the blue Protoss player, as the blue Protoss player is going to scout out this factory, know that something is up, and then perhaps get some damage onto that SCV. The probe now wandering away. You can see there is a lift off there, and this factory is simply here for scouting purposes and not for any cheese whatsoever. So the factory is going to fly overhead and see what exactly is going to be coming in. Meanwhile, back at home, I still do not see a starport yet, just going in for that concussive shells and training up some marauders as well, as this 1-0 factory trying to build and train a Hellion. It is not going to work. That Hellion is not going to really be able to deal all too much damage, as we are now getting even more Stalkers. So this was a proxy factory liftoff into Hellions, but one pylon and this Stalker able to just shut it down. We can see that Marines and Marauders are now making their way across on the far side. We are going into a starport as well. One Hellion already in position here. The Hellion did get one kill, and that is it, as we are now going to be going into Marauders and Marines. A force field misses, so a key force field misses there, as the Marines and the Marauders are able to finally slip through, perhaps waiting for that force field to be completed, and now getting some easy damage onto the gateway. The gateway taking some damage now. Is a Stalker going to be able to get away in time? No, there are 3 Stalkers and a Sentry, as the Sentry now comes back over. Meanwhile, back over here, it looks like another Hellion trying to be trained, a robotics facility being placed down, an Observer or an Immortal may be added. An Observer first to try to figure out what's going on along the far side of the map. One SCV over here. The Sentries are going to be able to push back, as the Warp Gate tech now decreases the building time, and now this factory trying to fly away will not be able to do so. The factory does get destroyed, as the pieces of the factory just fall into space. I'm not quite sure how gravity works in space, but yes, those pieces did fall into space. Back over here, we are going into a command center now. We are getting Cloak and going into Banshees. The Marines and the Marauders need to run all the way back home. But the effectiveness of that harassment really not too good so far. The probe now looking to perhaps run by that Xel'Naga tower. Going to easily get taken down by Marauders and Marines as we are now warping in a Nexus at the natural expansion. 30 probes, 25 SCVs. Command center is still being built. Nexus a little bit further along. It's going to take some time to upgrade to an orbital command and lift off and land. We are going into double barracks now for a total of 3 as we are now researching STEM. Marauders and Marines should be able to fend off any gateway push as we are now currently getting STEM, and this Banshee trying to fly around the far side. The SCV does hold the Xel'Naga tower as the Banshee now making its way inside the base. There are Stalkers with an observer already present, and this is not going to be good news for this Banshee. The Banshee cloaking research was cancelled in order to get an early Raven, and now the Stalkers are in position that cloaking that the one observer will be able to detect that Banshee even if it was cloaked, and this Banshee pretty much is going to sit here for quite some time. There is also an observer inside the main base of the red Terran player here. We can see going into a reactor and double reactor, so this is going to be a lot more Marines than Marauders. We should also see the combat shield be researched. I do not see an engineering bay though, so it's going to be quite some time before we get any weapons upgrades. Currently finally getting some medevacs here. Perhaps we will see a swap as an orbital command pulls in a mule, and now the orbital command going to make its way over there as we are now salvaging bunkers in order to move that line of defense. Stim pack, Marines now just going to be doubly trained, is just going to lift off and perhaps swap with the tech lab in order to get double medevacs. That could be an option here. You only need 1 Raven if you can keep that Raven alive to hunt out for those observers. There you go, a medevac now moving out, and it is going to be a reactor swap there in order to train up more medevacs, Vikings, and perhaps some Marauders and Marines. Medevacs and Marauders simply moving their way out now, but this is not going to be very good news for Terran. Terran is slightly behind. He is now down to 33 Harvesters compared to 44. He didn't deal really that much damage with his factory liftoff landing to get some Hellion damage. He did not get any damage with that Banshee at all. The Banshee is still in play though. Has it returned back home? Not 100% sure where that Banshee is. The Banshee's on the top left corner. It did not get any kills whatsoever. Just sitting there as there are Stalkers lying in wait, ready to take it out. Marauders and Marines with 1 Raven. The Raven could drop a point defense drone and stop many of that Stalker fire. You can see triple pylons now being warped in as well, as it looks like the Protoss player wants to make sure he is not supply blocked after warping in a nice round of Zealots and Sentries. Marauders and Marines looking to destroy these destructible rocks. The medevacs healing up the Marauders and the Marines, for some reason deciding to use those stim packs on the destructible debris here. Those units are going to just simply make their way up the ramp, pretty much see nothing at all, and then perhaps try to push up onto the high ground. Currently no Colossi, and that may be the issue, but we do have weapons upgrades, level 1 weapons and armor upgrades already coming in for all of those ground units. The medevac's going to do a quick fly around as the Raven now returning back home, and perhaps is going to do another large counter push. There are Stalkers in position. Where are these medevacs going to go? The medevac's going to fly straight into a group of Stalkers. No, the Stalker's unable to blink across that chasm there. And now the medevac's pretty much knowing that no drop is possible. Observers now trying to push out and keep track of where this drop could possibly be. But the units are now just simply retreating and returning back home. 122 food versus 115. Zealots still being trained. We are also going into charge now, in addition to a shield upgrade. So this is something that you don't normally see, but the shield upgrades on all of the Zealots, Sentries, and perhaps even the Archons. That we do have, no, we don't have a Templar Archives just quite yet, but based upon the Twilight Council, perhaps he's going to be going into Archons in order to get that AoE damage. Zealot now quickly chasing after that Marine there. The pylon was finished warping in, as a Nexus should follow up behindly, or just behind that in just a couple more seconds. The Raven does have a lot of energy, 200 energy. That observer trying to sneak away. It looks like it will be able to do so. Will the Raven be able to catch up? It should be able, as the observer, is it going to be able to fly away? Yes, it is able to fly away, as the Raven just losing that sight there, and the units are all backing off. Terran with a slight mineral advantage, but the armies are pretty much even. But with the gateway tech and the warp gate tech, it will be much easier for Protoss to replenish his army, especially in the battlefield, since he is going to be the one engaging. The Marines and Marauders are not upgraded. The upgrades have just started for the armor weapons upgrade, about halfway done, but we are now about to finish the shield upgrades and the ground armor upgrades for that Terran, or sorry, for that Protoss army, as the Marines now trying to make their way. Auto turrets are in position. So 2 auto turrets. The auto turrets do have decent range. Zealots are now going to try to push in, but they're not going to be able to do very much at all. And those auto turrets lasting 180 seconds, going to get in some easy damage onto those units. Also provide sight up onto that high ground, as those auto turrets will get destroyed. But energy will just be replenished there in just a matter of seconds. There is a proxy pylon over here. We'll see what the Protoss player does try to do with it. 59 probes versus 50 SCVs. Production tab does show Psystorm now being researched, as we are finally rebuilding that factory, perhaps for a second starport. Terran Bio doesn't really need a factory to support it, but perhaps Hellions would be a good choice to try to counter all of those Zealots and Sentries. Zealots with already a base 3 armor, perhaps up to 5, with that Guardian Shield, and 5 armor is a lot to deal with, as an engagement may come in. Zealots are going to engage over here. Stalkers, point defense drone, intercepting a lot of the attacks of Sentries, now going after the point defense drone, as both sides fighting, and a very nice engagement by the Terran player here. The Terran player now going to be forcing his way up the ramp, perhaps trying to deal some damage here, as the Marauders and the Marines are going to engage. Sentries, Stalkers, force field splitting up the army. Psystorm getting a nice pocket of damage there, and that is going to be very difficult, as the Sentries now getting another round of force field, and beautifully played by the blue Protoss, splitting up the army, dealing that damage, and then forcing Psystorm when they cannot retreat. High Templars are now going to merge into an Archon here, and the Archon is an even larger threat, especially with the shield upgrades, as the Stalkers now blinking after those Marauders. The Marauders trying to fight their way back. The Archon is going to be a massive unit, is going to be able to absorb that damage and not get slowed down at all. And very nice engaging there, as we now see the Archons may do a bit of a counter push. Marauders and Marines making their way into the main base, only to get destroyed here, as we now see additional pylons being warped in to make sure that these warp gates all stay operational. Marauders and Marines being forced to pull back. Harvester count 61 to 54, but we are going to be running off of 3 bases compared to 2. This orbital command has not yet lifted off. Army sizes is now very much in favor of the Protoss, as the Protoss should be setting up for what will be a very deadly counterattack. Level 2 weapons upgrade, level 3 armor upgrades now coming in. Those Archons with 1 shield plus the Guardian Shield is going to really reduce the amount of damage that those Marines and even those Marauders are able to do. Archons simply making their way forward now. How much damage can be dealt? The Stalkers are going to be in a bit of trouble, though, as they do need to peel back there. This front door very well fortified. No siege tanks, but still very, very deadly, as the Zealots quickly shut down that SCV. 1-1 upgrades compared to 1-1-2 upgrades. The Archon's really going to be the problem here, especially with that armor upgrades, as I mentioned earlier, reducing the damage from 7 down to 6, plus Guardian Shield would be 4 damage, and trying to deal 4 damage to something with 350 shields, just very difficult. Medevacs are going to be spotted by the probes down over here. We can see a drop now happening. Oh, no, Banshee trying to make its way in, but getting quickly feedbacked by the High Templar, so an easy kill there for that High Templar, as we now see a medevac drop going to be happening over here. It looks like what happened here, I believe the High Templar may have finished off these units as a medevac drop, now trying to put in pressure. 1-1 upgrades. There is going to be a High Templar in this group. The Zealots are in position. No feedback whatsoever. Marauders and Marines just simply unloading off over here. And now their stim, I believe, has come to an end. A medevac dropping over here as well. But the Archons, Zealots, and Stalkers are all in position to try to destroy this army before it even really makes a move out. Marauders and Marines really need to somehow establish a hold onto this low ground. A pylon now warping right next to a bunker. That's not going to last very long, as the Marines and the Marauders are now going to destroy these pylons off over here. But there is still one pylon in the fog of war off in this location. Is it going to get spotted? It is not spotted, but this proxy pylon is going to spot another medevac here, as the Marauders and the Marines are just trying to figure out what can be done. Zealots, Stalkers, and Archons, and I'm waiting for an engagement, waiting for something to happen, as the Marauders and the Marines are now going to warp it or drop in and take down this pylon off over here. The armies are kind of split though. One medevac off over here, two medevacs with Marauders off over here. The pylon still spotting these units. This pylon now going to get taken down, as a nexus being established in the center location. The Zealots quickly marching their way in and just going to attack straight up on this front door. Guardian Shield in position, force fields not in time, as Psystorm now raining across all of those units. All those SCVs, all those mules getting destroyed in just a matter of seconds. Stalkers are now on the high ground, and now more Psystorm raining in. The Marauders and the Marines, Stalkers blinking back. Beautiful control by the Protoss, as the Protoss is able to get those Psystorms down without really taking too much splash damage there. Archons now finally being merged in the middle of the battle here, as the Archons with 2-1-3 upgrades should be able to finish off this push completely, and we are now seeing the Terran player down to 55 food, 54, and I believe the GG will be coming in. There's the Manor Mule against himself, as we now see the blue Protoss taking this game, game 3 in this series. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed game 3. Hopefully the audio quality is much better since I am back at home, and there are still plenty of games to play in this series, and I will continue to cast them, as there seems to be a little bit of a lull in terms of just replays to cast out there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.